All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're basically becoming archaeological detectives. Our mission? To piece together the story of a massive, incredibly advanced ancient civilization that just vanished. They left behind some truly amazing achievements, some tantalizing clues, and of course, some profound mysteries. So, let's get our hands dirty and start digging. So, here it is, our first piece of evidence. This is a Harappan seal. It's carved from a soft stone, and it's just beautiful, right? It's got these amazing animal designs and a line of writing. It's elegant, it's complex, and we have absolutely no idea what it says. And that, right there, is our central challenge. It's a huge one. If you can't read what people wrote, how on earth do you understand their world? Well, we have to become detectives. We have to follow the trail of clues they left behind in their bricks, their beads, and their bones, and literally reconstruct their world from the ground up. So here's our game plan for this investigation. First, we'll check out their mind-blowing planned cities. Then we're going to zoom way in on the tiny crafts that tell us about their daily lives. After that, we tackle the great unsolved mysteries. And finally, we'll look at the incredible detective story of how this lost world was even found in the first place. Okay, let's start with the biggest clues of all. I mean, literally the biggest. The sprawling ruins of their cities. A place like Mohenjo-Daro isn't just some old town. It is an absolute masterpiece of ancient urban planning. Right away, when you look at one of their cities, you notice it's split into two main parts. You've got the citadel. It's smaller, but it's built up high, and it's where you find the important public buildings. And then you have the lower town, which is way bigger, and it's where most people actually lived. This physical separation, it just screams structure. It tells you right off the bat this was a highly organized society. Now, take a look at this number, 4 million. Any ideas? 4 million is the estimated number of person days of labor it took not to build the city, just to build the foundations. Just think about that. This wasn't some village that grew organically. This was a massive, centrally planned project from day one. And the evidence for this incredible planning is it's everywhere you look. The streets are laid out in a perfect grid pattern. The bricks they used had a standard size across hundreds and hundreds of miles. And get this is my favorite part. They laid out the city's drainage system first and then built the houses along it. They even built their homes with privacy in mind, so no windows face the main street. You know, one of the early archaeologists on the site, Ernest Mackay, was just blown away by their drains. He called it the most complete ancient system as yet discovered. And he was right. We're talking about a covered drainage system that connected every single house to the main street drains. It was a public health marvel, honestly, unmatched for thousands of years. So up on that citadel, you find one of the most famous structures of the whole civilization, the Great Bath. Now, don't let the name fool you. This wasn't the local swimming pool. It was a massive, beautifully built, and totally watertight tank. Its unique design and prominent location have scholars pretty convinced it was used for some kind of important large-scale rituals. Okay, so we've looked at the massive scale of their cities. Now let's zoom way in. We're shifting our focus from monumental walls to miniature objects. We're going from bricks to beads. Because sometimes, the smallest clues can tell the biggest stories about a society. So here's a cool trick archaeologists use to understand social differences. They sort all the artifacts they find into two basic piles: everyday utilitarian stuff made from common clay or stone, and then the luxury goods. These are things made from rare, expensive materials using really complex techniques. And wherever you find concentrations of these luxury items, well, that's a pretty good clue you found a center of wealth and power. Let's just take this one little carnelian bead. It might not look like much, but making it was an incredibly complicated process. First, you have to fire the raw stone to get that beautiful red color. Then you have to carefully chip it into a rough shape, then flake it into its final form. And then you have to grind it, polish it, and drill a tiny little hole clean through it. This wasn't a hobby. This was a highly specialized industry. So where were they getting all these exotic materials? Well, from all over the ancient world. They were getting lapis lazuli from way up in Afghanistan, copper from Oman, gold from South India. We even have ancient texts from Mesopotamia, that's modern-day Iraq, that talk about trading with a distant land called Maluha. And yep, most scholars are pretty sure Maluha was the Indus Valley. This was a globalized economy 5,000 years ago.
So, we've got a civilization of brilliant city planners and incredibly skilled artisans with a global trade network. They were on top of their game. But this is where our investigative trail starts to get a little cold. This is where we run into the really big, unanswered questions.
I mean, it's the most basic question you can ask about any complex society. Who was in charge? But with the Indus Valley, all the usual clues are just missing. There are no grand palaces for kings, no obvious huge temples for priests, and no lavish royal tombs like the ones you see in Egypt. So, who was running the show? Well, archaeologists have basically three main theories. One is that maybe there were no rulers at all, and society was egalitarian. Another is that each major city had its own ruler. But the theory that seems to fit the evidence best is that this was a single, unified state. Why? Because that incredible uniformity we talked about, the same bricks, the same weights, the same pottery styles over a vast area, that suggests a powerful central authority was calling the shots. And then we have the ultimate mystery. Why did it all end? For a long time, the leading theory was a violent invasion, but the evidence for that just doesn't hold up. Climate change is a really strong possibility, but it's hard to explain how that would cause a collapse across the entire civilization. What we do know is that the unifying elements, the seals, the script, the standard weights, they all just disappeared. The state itself fell apart. The question we still can't answer is why? Now for our last section, we're going to pivot a little bit. We're shifting from the ancient mystery of the Harappans themselves to the modern mystery of their rediscovery. I mean, how does an entire civilization get lost for thousands of years and then get put back on the map? The story itself is its own drama. The first Harappan seal was actually found way back in the 1870s, but the guy who found it just couldn't believe how old it was. The big breakthrough came in 1924 when an archaeologist named John Marshall officially announced the discovery to the world. And then, in the 1940s, another archaeologist, R.E.M. Wheeler, came along and totally revolutionized how we dig.
And this change in technique was, well, it was everything. See, Marshall used to dig in straight horizontal lines, which meant he was mixing up artifacts from totally different time periods, losing all that precious context. Wheeler insisted that you had to follow the natural layers of the mound, the stratigraphy. It was like he figured out how to read the story that the dirt was telling, layer by layer. It was a complete game changer. I love this quote from Wheeler himself. It really captures the passion that drives this kind of work. He brought a military-style precision to his digs, but also this relentless, almost manic enthusiasm. It's just a great reminder that behind every one of these discoveries is a team of real people driven by a deep, deep sense of adventure. So there we have it. We followed the trail of evidence from grand cities all the way down to tiny beads. We've seen what we know, and we've confronted the big mysteries that we still don't have answers for. So where does that leave us? Well, even though we can't read their writing, the material evidence, the actual stuff they left behind, has let us reconstruct a remarkably vivid picture of their world. We can see their sheer intelligence in their city grids, their incredible artistry in their jewelry, and their bold ambition in their massive trade networks. But here's the thing that's so exciting. This investigation, it's nowhere near over. It is a story that is still being written, one new discovery at a time. The script is still waiting to be cracked. Countless sites are still completely unexplored. It really makes you wonder, what final, revolutionary secret does the Indus Valley still hold, just waiting to be unearthed?